My guest today on the Neil Wilkins podcast says that you are wasting precious budget on traffic that never converts because your generic messages are failing to connect. He also reckons that landing pages don't deliver on ad promises and that manually optimizing what you're doing in your digital marketing can't keep pace with the market. Some controversial statements here from my guest, David from Groas. David, welcome.
Thanks, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're making some bold claims there that we're getting it all wrong, but I have to say I'm kind of on your side of the court because I find I struggle with a lot of the things that you're talking about there. But also, I think a lot of the audience will be too. Why have we been getting this so wrong? Is it just because it is so complicated?
Good question. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's complicated. I would just say there's a lot to do. Obviously, it depends again on what sort of advertising platform you're using, but Google generally has more of a learning curve, I would say, than some of the others. So there's really a lot going on. And again, depending on the campaign type you choose, in some of them like PMAX, you kind of let Google do its thing. But something like search, where there's a lot more variables at play, there I would say it's quite hard to manage everything 24/7, like you probably would be able to with some of the new technologies that are out now.
So I guess for many of us who've been there, seen it, done it, and tried, experimented, failed appallingly most of the time, and I'll put myself into that kind of camp, is that you always feel like you're chasing. It never feels like you're really on top of it. The algorithms constantly moving and shifting. The interface with, as you say, Google, others are available. It always seems to just be constantly this sort of shifting sands, and that's difficult, isn't it? Because as a marketer, as a business owner, entrepreneur, you've got a day job to do. This is not necessarily something you're totally focused on. So with that kind of shifting, I mean, I would call it chaos. It's really difficult to know kind of, right, where's my priority here?
100%. 100%. I think that's definitely as well what we've seen at Groas. So just for context, we started actually building this tool for big Google ad spenders, right? So people spending 6-7 figures a month who really know what they're doing. Those were actually the first few customers and the people we almost built the product with, right? Hearing their feedback and working in tandem with them. Then when we actually released it to the public and opened up the self-serve model, all of a sudden we had a massive influx of smaller business owners, right? So people spending up to maybe 10, 15, 20K a month, who in a lot of cases actually had no idea what they were doing. And they weren't getting results, but they weren't sure why. And when actually talking with these customers in depth and having a look at their accounts, often there's 10 variables at play, but 2 of them are just set up incorrectly. 8 are good, but 2 is what's actually driving most of the poor results. So that's kind of when I started to see that. It also tweaked a lot of the product direction and where we're headed now. But that's a bit of context and a bit of story. So it really comes from hearing all of these war stories that I've seen in the market.
And I guess it's one of those things that, you don't know what you don't know. So if you've kind of been taught by somebody who is kind of jaded because they've never managed to make it work, and you're coming in, you're new in the business, or you're a startup and you talk to one of your mates down the pub and it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, but have you had any success? Well, not really, but it's just so hard. It's like the bar is very low, isn't it? So those organizations that you're talking about with the the bigger spends, the big as you say, 6-7 figures, I mean, obviously huge spend. There's got to be a lot of trust that actually we are going to see a return from this, because most of us would think, well, we need to put kind of money into this, bit of budget up for it, but actually our expectations are so low because it never really works. I mean, the bar is so painfully low, isn't it? It shouldn't be like that.
True. Yeah, you're exactly right. Especially you're right, for the smaller businesses, the bar is quite low. I mean, actually, I did say that our first few customers were big spenders, but the first ever customer that we ever had was a South African IT services business, really small, like a 3-man shop, who'd been spending like 2-3K a month on Google Ads and getting 0 results, had never had any sort of conversion, nothing. And then just by fixing like 1 or 2 little things, right, maybe a couple of keywords, a couple of the match types. They went from getting no conversions to having to hire extra sales staff because they couldn't deal with all the conversions that were coming in from those Google ads. So that was like the first mini test case. I was like, okay, cool, we could be onto something here with what we're doing. And that gave us enough motivation to keep going. But you're right, the bar, especially for the smaller businesses, is really low.
So I know a lot of the work that you're doing with Groas obviously covers the broader spectrum of, well, let's just call it digital marketing, and not just ad spend, because I think what you've found is that actually it needs to be a more holistic approach. I mean, I'm guessing you're a big advocate of kind of blended work, that yes, you probably do need a bit of ad spend, but actually then there's landing pages, there's your wider digital footprint. Is this a kind of a more holistic approach to digital? Because a lot of us see, and I guess have kind of grown up with, oh no, you put the budget spend over there, then you go off in this other direction doing something else. It's not very joined up, is it?
Yeah, so that's great. So landing pages was one of the first things that we tackled, and actually making it really easy. So being able to work with people's existing landing pages, but optimizing those. Right, we're not a landing page builder. We might eventually do that for like the really new businesses who have nothing. But landing pages is a really, really big one. It's a big lever to pull that I think a lot of people overlook who come from a traditional ads background. So that's something that we built into the product from day one. We are building other things. So we can call them maybe almost separate products, but within the Groas umbrella, that will focus on the wider digital footprint. So LLMs are becoming a bigger and bigger source of traffic. So we're going to be building some stuff in there. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, we'll be building some stuff around that.
Go on, you do want to say some stuff, don't you? I always like to get a scoop on here. It's always good. I mean, obviously, no commercial sensitivity, yeah, but I mean, you must see this market is obviously moving, and as soon as we bring AI into the mix here, it's like people's ears kind of prick up, and it's like, oh, hold on, I've played a bit with ChatGPT. How can I make it work? Obviously, what we're talking about here is something a lot deeper. And a lot more kind of nuanced with, obviously this kind of promotional sensitivity. But kind of, you were saying about landing pages being one of the early kind of areas to start with. Are there other kind of places where, again, somebody listening to this says, okay, now you got my interest. You're talking some of the gaps that I have in my knowledge. We're talking LLMs here now as well. It's kind of, where do I begin? I mean, because that's often a hard thing, is once you get momentum up, it's not so bad. But where do you actually start with this?
So I think search is fundamentally changing. The way we use Google search already, they have AI mode that they've released to most of their users at this point. Google, that is. So search is fundamentally changing, and that's because of all these LLMs, right? So Google's having to adapt. They're adapting their business model. And search ads are, as we speak, changing, right? They're very soon going to start to be displayed. They already are actually displayed in the AI mode answer bit that Google has. That's going to change things a lot. It's going to change things at a fundamental ad level, right? Because I think Google is also slowly planning a move towards keywordless advertising, right? So all of there's a lot of unknowns at the moment, right? And these are all things that Groas, like, especially given we're so tied into Google, we have to be on top of. But there's also the other side, right? So the organic side. So how, if you are a business, how can you make sure that when someone searches something relevant to your business, you show up in that LLM response, right? You show up in that AI mode response of Google. That's a whole different problem to what I think traditional SEO was. With traditional SEO, maybe you could focus on writing some really good blog content, right? And then that would get you get you ranked for those keywords, and then everyone's happy. What we're seeing, and again, these algorithms are constantly changing, but what we're seeing is that just writing good blogs is probably not going to get you ranked in those LLM responses. You have to do other things. So we're going to be building around those other things. Right? I can give you one example. Reddit seems to be a really big place where these LLMs like to get their answers, right? So if you have a brand and it's being mentioned well in some obscure subreddit, then the LLM is going to like it, right? Because it's going to be, okay, this looks like, doesn't look biased. It's coming from a forum. It's crowdsourced information. Therefore, it's most likely to be true. And that's how your brand gets to rank. Obviously, the LLM is also pulling in from a bunch of different data sources, but that's one of the key ones. So things like that, businesses are going to have to adapt pretty drastically, because I think the old method of just put out content and cross your fingers, I think that's not going to work as well anymore.
Isn't this interesting? Because if that plays out, the whole idea of, I've been banging the drum for earned media. For those in the audience who don't understand, there's paid media, there's owned media, but then there's earned media. The earned bit is the kind of advocacy, conversational, community stuff that Dave is describing here. And I think for me, that is really interesting, because advocacy and discussion around your brand or your products and services is almost that is the gold dust that we're all looking for as marketers, because people are talking. That's a good thing. And so now actually it's interesting to hear that the LLMs are going to be using that as their kind of almost their fodder. So they're going to be looking for that first, rather than the beautifully polished blog news articles. So we're kind of giving up a little bit of ownership, I guess, of the content by doing crowdsourcing, user-generated content and the like. Is it going to be a lot more? It's a lot more human than you'd expect. I think everyone's frightened that the AIs are coming to take over, but it feels like they're rewarding humans for being human and talking.
That's exactly right. Until clever humans start to figure out how to use AI to dupe the AI into thinking it's humans doing the talking. The reason I'm really, what we'll be building will be in this space, and I'm very convinced of it, is because I think 90% of our signups all come organic, and all of those organic signups come from LLMs. So it's ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, etc., all of them referring groas as the answer to their problem. That's not an accident. We've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to make sure that's the case. That is not an accident. But given what we've done to make sure that that's the case, we want to help other businesses as well do that. But look, still early doors. For now, we're still focused on the paid ad side because that's what we know well. But yeah, there will be, I think, a lot of solutions out there that will try and get people those results, whereby you get your mentions in some obscure Reddit forum or some obscure Quora answer that links your business. I think that's going to be a huge untapped opportunity.
It's a different way of thinking about stuff, isn't it, really? It's very much more kind of circular rather than linear. I'm trying to sort of think how to describe this. I mean, the linear stuff is like, I've got some budget, I place an ad, I hope somebody sees it, hooks into it, and then a certain percentage of those are going to come through and do something. It's very kind of one track, isn't it? Whereas this feels like we're moving into a space where, that can still apply, but actually to get people to the landing page or to get people to this destination, we're going to see a lot more stuff, because they probably aren't, well, in the very near future, aren't going to be doing the searches. They're going to have their AI assistant doing the search anyway. And so therefore, we're kind of talking to a different audience. I'm finding this really quite fascinating because, obviously what you're doing, we want to come on to it in a minute, but you're obviously very AI powered as a service and kind of advocating the joining up of AI. But we're actually seeing AI then doing the searching. We're seeing AI making the recommendations back to human. Maybe now, as we're seeing with things like Manus and GPT coming through, latest versions, actually then almost giving them the right to then go make the purchase without necessarily in the near future referring back to us as human. Just go do it. Just go sort it. The fridge is empty. Go buy my food shop kind of thing, and then the food arrives on the doorstep. It just feels that we as humans now are starting to have to really think about this stuff in a very different way. There's almost like I was going to say, it feels a little bit like spaghetti. There's many kind of spaghetti strands that are all kind of interwoven here. It's going to get quite complicated. How are we going to sort of understand, do you think, how to kind of almost pull these strands apart and say, okay, well, there's my ad strand, as we call it. That's my ad piece of spaghetti. There it is. Okay, so I need to manage that. And now I'm going to do my UGC strand. Okay, we're going to be doing that because we need to kind of be in these community forums, etc., 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 etc. It's a hard one from just in my very planful way to kind of be able to separate those things out, and it just almost goes into the it's just too hard to do box. I'll put that off till tomorrow. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling like this. How do you kind of overcome that, I guess, inertia, resistance, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're moving towards a world of AI to AI advertising. I think, as we were saying, that's going to be really interesting. But ultimately, the way of solving that is attribution, but that's really hard. That's going to be really hard. So people who can solve for the attribution problem, I think will make a lot of money, because it's not easy, and it just speaks to the point that businesses are going to have to be spread out a lot further than they thought they might. Right? Maybe, like I said in the past, you thought just having a blog was enough. Now LLMs are going to start reading videos, YouTube videos, right? You probably want to get some video content out there. They're going to be reading LinkedIn posts. You're going to want to get some LinkedIn content out there. So it's going to be, it's not going to be like a one solution that answers everything. You're going to have to be spread out quite wide. You know, the common marketing wisdom is you find one channel that's working and you double down, triple down. That is, I think, is going to be harder and harder to do in the future, for sure.
And it feels like it's not going to stay static either. Once you've cracked it one week, it's like, oh no, it's just changed again next week. Honestly, you've got to stay on the ball here, haven't you? You really do. And I guess, you know, you'll obviously, as you say, you know, very, very close to Google, and obviously watching other players and seeing how they're kind of sort of starting to emerge and do different things. I mean, kind of in the coming months, I mean, obviously a lot of us are kind of, I guess, sort of trying and playing with various different LLMs and you know, platforms to help us to kind of do this stuff at scale, or at least even, you know, at the starting blocks, to help us to try and do it in a way that, you know, actually just makes us able to understand it. I mean, would you be an advocate for kind of, you talked about doubling down there, but doubling down on, say, a single AI and really getting intimate with it? I mean, my big choice is ChatGPT because of the, you know, the whole kind of breadth of things it can do. It really serves my purposes. But I know a lot of other people are using more specialist AIs to do particular things. Do you advocate for either direction, or is it kind of down to the individual?
Yeah, in my experience, each model is good at a different thing. So I think even for myself, right, if I have to write a lengthy email, I'll use Claude. Claude is really good, especially at brainstorming and writing stuff that sounds human-like and not AI-like. Claude, I would definitely say is good for any form of copywriting. Then you got ChatGPT. They are the big name on the block because they were the first to arrive. Funnily enough, they're going to actually be releasing ads natively quite soon, I think. That's why Sam Altman's able to raise at these crazy valuations, because he's coming for the Googles, for the Metas. That's what he's coming for, I think. Grok is pretty decent. I think Grok is good if you're trying to do more like obscure research. It does, and it also pulls in from like tweets and threads quite well, obviously, because it's native to it. But there you'll find often information that you maybe can't find in other LLMs. I like Grok for that. And then Gemini. Gemini's an interesting one. Gemini, I think, often for coding, I think it's pretty good. That or Claude. That's personally how I'd rank them / how use them myself day to day. But ultimately, it's whatever people feel comfortable with. But I also wouldn't double down on any one in particular at this stage, because they're just they're still in scaling mode and learning mode. So I think it'll be another 3 to 5 years before we see a clear winner. Yeah, that's what I would say.
And I guess I would put Perplexity into the mix as well there. For a lot of the time, you know, with client work and things, I'm needing to do deep research into sectors and markets that I know nothing about, and I can get a briefing, I can get the deep dive, I can get the, you know, market share, I can get, you know, literally anything from everywhere and anything that I need. And it's just, but again, then fact checked across to another platform as well, which I'll always do. I would never send something to a client that I think, oh, okay, I'm 100%, you know, reliant on this one. It's like, oh, actually, I didn't fact check it. Yeah. Always kind of double check and cross reference against another one, which obviously really helps. So kind of when we sort of, you know, double down now as we need to on obviously the groas stuff, because I want to go a little bit deeper into kind of what the offer is and how you've seen that emerge, because obviously you're focusing here on priorities as you see them. what kind of things would you sort of be, I guess, waving the flag for mostly within Groas? Because, you must be seeing sort of good ROI coming through from particular areas of the work that you're doing. Are there any kind of real standout areas where, people can get a quick win? Because I know a lot of people would be looking for that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, when we first started doing Groas, there was a big human in the loop element, right? So Groas would come up with some suggestions. They may say, hey, look, you should add these keywords for X, Y, Z reason based on what we're learning about your campaign, your offer, blah, blah, blah. You add them and then you see on ROI, okay, that's great. Where we're headed now with the product, and probably out now in 3 to 4 weeks, requires a lot of testing. It's a big change. We're basically headed towards a fully autonomous world, i.e., you connect/create your campaign to Groas, and then you never use the product again. That's where we want to head to. Yeah. Now, to get to that, it's been a lot of work, a lot of testing, right? So as of right now, there's still that human loop element. But where we want to get to is a product that actually no one uses. Like you can get updates however you want, WhatsApp, Slack, or email, basically saying, hey, look, by the way, these are the actions that Groas took, right? It added these 10 keywords, removed these 50 keywords, created these landing pages, paused these ad groups, like did all of this stuff. Your performance is up this week by X amount. Do you want to increase budget? Like that's where we're headed as a product. That actually was almost a rough vision I had when first starting this out. Very rough, but I didn't really think we could probably get there. I always thought, the human loop element is going to be important. But what we've seen, right, with people basically just clicking approve all to whatever Groas's suggestions are, is that those suggestions tend to be pretty on point. So that's basically where we're heading. Exciting, but quite scary as well.
I mean, exciting, off the charts exciting. I mean, you're very modest here, David. I mean, that is something that, to me, just the way that you said, and as much as actually what you said, it was the way that you said it. It was almost like we are now rethinking, because we have to, rethinking everything that we've ever done. I mean, talk about frictionless experience. I mean, this is something I've heard over the last sort of couple of years, is this whole kind of real push to, you've got to take friction out of the experience from the customer's perspective. And I mean, there is the ultimate removal of all friction, because customer doesn't even need to use the service. I mean, it's incredible. Just that mindset change, because all of us would still be working, I guess, well, most of us, apart from you, David, but working from the baggage of the past and saying, okay, how can we improve this or improve this? But that's a complete rethink of human getting in the way of themselves, actually, in a process where actually, as human, like you say, with the approve all button being pressed all the time, it's like you didn't actually add any value in the first place, did you, human? So that's a really interesting mindset kind of shift from my perspective. I think, a lot of us can kind of learn from that approach and just think, actually, if I was to take myself completely out of the equation, would this process or would this activity actually lose anything? Not this one would over here, but this one, no. And I guess once you remove the human, the speed goes up. The kind of the measurable crumb trail of activity obviously is completely and utterly watertight. That's so exciting, just as a conceptual way of thinking about this. Wow. How long do you think that's going to be, and to get to a point where a human literally will subscribe to this, I'm guessing, or buy lifetime access or whatever, and then never needs to touch it again? I mean, wow.
Yeah, I think I want to say optimistically, how it goes in tech, but I would say 3 to 4 weeks is where before we will have this out. We've been testing it with our own demo accounts for now. That's on a separate instance, separate branch, and it seems to be doing quite well. Again, like, my goal was never actually to build some kind of a time-saving tool. I don't think of Groas as a time saver, and it's great. It's a plus. It'll save time, but that doesn't really excite me. To be building something that saves people time. What excites me is building an autonomous agent that can outperform the best marketers out there. That's what excites me. So it's all about performance, and that will be the constant benchmark, right? Once we're there, we'll probably be running a whole bunch of tests against like very skilled marketers and just seeing, basically comparing the two. And I think that's the goal, is that to basically be able to beat 99.9% of marketers. That's the end goal.
Wow. And I can see a Reddit thread. I can see a whole gaming conference here. Can you outbid and outsmart a marketer? And you see these banks of, I mean, there's a whole new gaming industry, David, you just created there, like for marketers, you know, and you kind of got the league tables, you know, global league tables, obviously here. Plus then Groas comes in and says, no, I'm going to absolutely clean up here because look, oh, I've already finished. And the marketer's like tapping away. I mean, I can just picture it now. It's
Yeah,
genius. I mean, but I mean, joking aside, I mean, is there a way, you know, to be building community like this and actually to kind of
yeah.
almost see if people can create the greatest grow-ass kind of agent or whatever? I mean, in terms of the way that it's used, or is it very, very much behind kind of closed doors? You plug in your requirements and the machine does the work, or is there an opportunity to be a little bit creative here? Because that would, from a marketer, I mean, I'm a competitive marketer, so maybe I'm not exactly yeah, kind of representative here, but I mean, that would be so exciting if I could actually be, you know, literally gaming in this kind of way against others. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be fascinating and good content too.
Indeed, it's something that we'll do. As of right now, we've kept everything pretty closed. To be honest, like we were building this almost in stealth for quite a while. I would say, working with like select number of customers, getting the product where it needs to be. But now we're kind of opening the floodgates a bit. But yeah, the competitive element sounds fun.
It's exciting. No, it sounds really exciting. Yeah, just the way you described it, I thought, oh, yes, outsmarting a marketer. I mean, again, bar is very low, obviously. Lucky AI, it's coming in to clean up. But anyway, sorry, marketers in the audience. I am one too. So kind of just kind of back to, obviously we'll put all the links to Groas and everything, and you know, get people sort of coming in to have a little explore and sort of play with it. But what would you describe would be almost at this stage? I mean, maybe not in the 3 to 4 week window, but like literally right here today. What would be the ideal customer for Groas? What kind of people would you be looking for to engage with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I honestly, I used to, when I first started building this, I wanted to focus on one niche of people, right? My background is in e-com, so I'll make Grass all about e-com customers, whatever. If you look at our customer list now, and again, I don't really track this anymore, I'm a lot less close to it. It's so varied, so diverse. We have auto body shops in Las Vegas. We have such a like diverse mix. So I would say really anyone running Google Ads, basically. Even if you're an agency, we're now starting to onboard agencies. That's something we weren't doing before. Anyone running Google Ads, you can try it at a low budget, see how you like it, and go from there.
Great stuff. Really, really interesting. And so, kind of a final question, Dave, in terms of, you know, just your view of this stuff. Do you feel, and I often find myself asking this of people who are kind of obviously very close to the market and trends as well, because obviously you have to be absolutely on point with, you know, monitoring the movements, particularly as you say with Google. Do you feel positive about the medium to long term? Do you think this is going in a good direction?
Is it paid ads? Is this paid ads
I'm
marketing?
just talking just this whole kind of new business thing, the opportunities, etc.
I would like to say I'm super. Ah, it's going to be great. Um, I'm a little scared, quite frankly. I'm a little scared. There's going to be some massive changes, I think, coming, and I think people do need to be prepared and try to stay ahead of the curve. That's my honest take, and it's been that way since the very beginning. I think the ad platforms are going to change drastically. Google Ads, Meta, all these things are going to change drastically. SEO, a lot of the old concepts and ways of working that we had, I think, are going to be overthrown by quite a bit. So yeah, I would say be prepared. Try stay at the forefront. If you do that, I think you'll be fine. You know, in all previous technology revolutions, there's always been new things created. I think this time will probably be no different. I think, I'm hoping. But yeah, it's gonna change a lot.
Mm. Exciting times, people. There you are. You have somebody at the forefront of this who is positively cautious, should we say? I'll put a nice kind of slightly
Yeah.
more gentle spin to it. But no, and I really appreciate your honesty there, because yeah, as you say, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, brilliant, embracing change, but there's so many unknowns here, aren't there? The only way you can really do it is stay close to somebody like you, to a platform like you have, and to kind of just continually improve and learn and be awake every day to the changes. I mean, it's you cannot just rely on the old ways of doing things, and that is very, very clear. So it's a really great conversation. I just want to push people to groas.ai and get over there and have a play, have an explore. Some amazing content on there in terms of video sort of help and ways of just really rethinking what you do. So yeah, thanks very much, David, for all your kind of hard work in this area. I mean, you are one of the driving forces in this space for sure. And yes, I wish you every success with the upgrade, the update in a few weeks' time. We'll all, I'm sure, be watching that one with great interest.
Thanks, Neil. It was a pleasure to be on.